part 3 of my latest research and evidence in relation to the World Trade Center. Please verify and corroborate this information. You can do that by going onto the Companies House registration system, checking the companies yourself and following the evidential links. Now there's a second part I've done this video because there was something I said which I think should have been said better. So I've taken the other video off and I'm going to put this one back, put this one on. So we're now going to look at a company called World Trade Center Business Limited, and this is the company that I was directed to by Neil Scott, and it becomes incredibly important. The first thing that I noticed straight away was the address here of 145 to 157 St John Street, London, and that's because that is the address that nearly always links to Companies Made Simple, which is a very important company in all of this, features right throughout the fraud. So we've now got an immediate connection from this company to the fraud as well. The other thing to notice is on the right hand side there, it was incorporated in 2007. This may or may not be relevant, but my company, Exborn Manor Freehold Limited, or a company where I was part of, was also started in 2007. So I just thought I'd mention that. Now there's only 6 officers on the people section, and there's quite limited information in relation to all of them except this person, which becomes incredibly important. So this is within the people record of the World Trade Center company that we were just looking at, and it's a Roberta Casapa, and it states here there's an address in Italy. She's Italian, and on the right when we click into it you can see she's linked to 3 companies. We're going to come back to this person later because it proves to be very important in a element of the research. But let's look at this lady first. So you can see one of the companies she's part of is Global Executive VIP Italian Fashion Limited. So global, worldwide executive VIP, not just VIP, not just executive VIP. So who they believe are incredibly important people around the world. And you can see in this an Italian fashion company. So we need to remember that, fashion, because we're going to come to that in a bit. On the right here we go into the company Global Executive VIP Italian Fashion Limited, and the same address that's normally linked to Companies Made Simple. And on the incorporation document at the bottom you can see an Italian address again. And the one of the other companies that Roberta is linked to is called Global VIP Service Limited, and you can see again that's got a correspondence address in Italy in the red box there. Within that company, you have, in the people section, you have a company called Target World Business Limited. Target World Business. Now, it's interesting because there's not many times when this address, 145 to 157 St John Street, doesn't go to Companies Made Simple. But it hasn't on that first document, which is very, very unusual in my research. And now we have a company called Target World Business. When you click into that, they have a link to TW Group Limited on the right there. Presumably that stands for Target World Business Group. And they were also incorporated in 2007. And on their incorporation document, they have Target World Business. Now this is interesting because there's nothing that I can see in relation to that specific company that jumps out, other than the address, which is normally linked to this. But on the right, I've gone back into Companies House and searched TWB Group Limited, which is the company we've just seen, and actually searching that for its overview page. And here we have one that was dissolved in 2024, which is very significant, I would think, the timing. And here is that company, TW Group Holding Limited. So it's a holding company for Target World. And there you go, you can see it was dissolved in March. It was only started in 2021, so it's not a very old company. And then when you go into the incorporation documents, it then links to China. Okay, so you now have a very significant link to China. So remember what I've said, this is international government fraud. So governments around the world appear to have jumped on the bandwagon with all of this. And I believe this is another example of that. So you have a Chinese company and a name. And when you go further into TWB Group, you can see massive China connections. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, but it's an international consulting group. If you go into them, they've got over 9,000 companies. Haven't looked at all of them. I've had a brief look. Most of them appear, or certainly the ones I've looked at, appear to have been dissolving since I've been exposing the fraud. And there's a lot of technology companies in there. Loads and loads appear to be technology orientated. No surprise with China. But of course, if it's part of this fraud, then it's probably very significant. And these are just a couple of the companies which I found interesting. One called Chain God Technology Limited, Chain God, and you can see it dissolved in May 2023. Another one called Blue Space Infotech, and another one called Israel UCL Chemicals Group Limited, another Israel company. So there's a definite connection throughout all of this fraud to Israel, which ties in with a lot of the information on the history of all of this. So going back to Target World Business Limited, that was on those initial documents. When you search Target World Business on Companies House, it brings up this company, and it's the same address. Okay, so we know it's related, and in fact there's several, but this one's particularly important, and you're going to see why. Same address in St John Street, and you go into the company people records, and we have a Portuguese connection. Bearing in mind we've got links to Madeleine McCann via Julia in relation to this research and these companies, and now we have a Portuguese connection. And if you go into that person, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, I'm not going to try, click on that person, they are linked to these companies. Very important. So you have one called Crown Security Intelligence Investigation, in brackets CSII, Crown Security Intelligence Investigation. Incredibly important. The Crown, it suggests the monarchy are linked through Portugal, through these companies from the World Trade Center business with Target World Business as well. Read into this what you will. Target World Business. Okay, if we go further in, we can see on that incorporation document for that Crown Intelligence company, it's Companies Made Simple. Okay, massively implicated in this fraud, linked to the paedophile information exchange via the National Council for Civil Liberties, linked to the World Trade Center disaster, etc. That Portuguese person is also linked to a company called Crown Intelligence Network Limited, another Crown company. And as we look into the incorporation document, just interesting on the right there, looking at the nature of the business. And at the bottom, you can see its previous company name, that it changed in 2013, and it was called Capital Global Management Asset and Business Research Developments Limited. Global. And when we go on to further on, look at the incorporation document, it's Companies Made Simple again. So remember I said about the Roberta Cassapa. This is going to be very important, because when you search on the left there, you can see I'm just searching Roberta Cassapa into the Companies House registration system. It brings up various companies, but this one jumped out, and it dissolved in July 2024. Okay, and you can see it's got an address in Hampshire again. So let's look at that company Roberta Limited. And on the incorporation document on the right, you can see it's Swift Incorporations Limited and Jordans and Sons. Okay, so it now links massively into the fraud, links back into my company, or the company I was part of, shall we say, Export Manor Freehold Limited, where this journey all started for me. Now, what I'm going to show you next, I believe, well, all the way through this journey for me, I believe it's been divine intervention through my faith that has enabled me to obtain this evidence. And what you're going to see now, I believe, is evidence to show that I was put in this position at this very time in history to expose this. Okay, because I can't I can explain it, but it's quite unfathomable what I'm uncovering. So here we have Roberta Limited, and you have a Keith Thomas Williamson linked to that company, and you can see in his occupation it says a fashion retailer. Bearing in mind we have come from an Italian fashion company, worldwide executive VIP fashion company, we now have Keith Thomas Williamson, fashion retailer, and he links to Bournemouth Town Centre bid. There's no other companies linked to him that are relevant. I think, in fact, it's maybe the only one, I can't remember. But this, of course, is absolutely mind-blowing now, because this is Bournemouth Town Centre bid. This is where my company, or the company I was part of, is based in Bournemouth. This is where I worked in the police. Okay, so I was in Kent Police in 2000. I then transferred to Dorset Police in 2006, and I worked in Bournemouth Town Centre. I had a specific role at one point with there, which we're going to come to in a minute. But I also, I then in 2010 transferred to Christchurch in Dorset, which is just along the coast. So let's look at Bournemouth Town Centre, bid company. And immediately on the incorporation documents, I recognised this address. The management office of the Avenue, Bournemouth, United Kingdom. Now that's incredibly important because the role I had covered where that office is. And it was basically a little office. It was an office within a little shopping centre with clothes outlets, etc. And it was where a lot of the shoplifters would be taken. It appears as though they've used that, and we'll come to it in a minute, because it's on the avenue, one side of it, but the other side is Commercial Road in Bournemouth, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it appears as though they've been using that as an address to avoid the accountability and liability for the connections. You're going to see how big this gets in a minute. Also on the incorporation document, you have an address of Richmond Hill, 21 Granville Chambers, Richmond Hill. Now remember, my research obtained via information from Julia, aka who I suspect is Madeleine McCann. There was an address of 52 Richmond Hill, literally linked to the same company, Quadrillo Limited, that Julia gave me the company name for, and that was 52 Richmond Hill in Bournemouth. And you'll see they're using different numbers within Richmond Hill as we move forward. You'll see that popping up. So immediately, this is very, very important on this Bournemouth Town Centre bid. And if we go into the company, on the people record, you can see a Martin Edward Davies links to a different address in Richmond Hill. Okay, so we've got Helleting House in Richmond Hill. So they're using different names and different addresses within Richmond Hill, which is very close to these other premises that we're talking about. But he, on the right there, you can see is linked to a company called Bournemouth Retailers Reducing Crime. Remember the office I told you about in Bournemouth? Well, this is it. Again, this is the management office, the Avenue, 11 to 21, Commercial Road in Bournemouth and Dorset. And the company was started in 2002, on the right there. You can see it was started in 2002, which is not long after the World Trade Center disaster in September 2001. If we go into that company, we believe it's that company. It may even be the Bournemouth. I can't remember, actually. It might be the Bournemouth bid company, actually. We've got a John Mark James of 81 Old Christchurch Road. And they are linked. Yeah, it was within the Bournemouth Town Centre bid company. And now they are connected to JPM Nominees Limited. Can you guess what that stands for? Yep, JP Morgan. Okay, so now this is huge. This is absolutely huge now, because remember, people within my company, the Fleming family, are linked to JP Morgan, to international banking fraud, to the intelligence agencies, through to the Crown, through to the monarchy, through to politicians, etc. And this is vast evidence now being obtained. So JPM Nominees, the address here, I believe, I haven't confirmed this, I believe that is an address that has been used for the management companies for Expoor Manor Freehold Limited at some point as well. So let's go into JPM Nominees Limited, and it's got an address in Bank Street and Canary Wharf. And it had a previous company name on the bottom right there, you can see, of Trust Shelf Co. Well, I immediately knew that was part of the fraud, because that is a shell company creation. Okay, and normally that is linked to Slaughter and May, who is also linked to the fraud. Okay, one of the world's largest legal firms. And going into JPM Nominees, you can see here, so if you click in the People tab and then go to the tab to the right, Persons of Significant Control or Interest, you have JP Morgan Capital Holdings Limited. Not just JP Morgan Holdings, Capital Holdings. So very, very important. And that has cropped up in my previous research as well. And you can see on the right there, they were appointed. This person was JPM was appointed, to this organisation, JP Morgan Secretary, UK Limited, in July 2002. So again, not long after the World Trade Center disaster. Now on the next page, we have a Michelle Catherine Young, linked to JPM Nominees, and you can see she was appointed in September 2023. And important to notice, British American. So this now bridges the ocean to America, which, this is international government fraud. As I've said, it's being confirmed. This is a worldwide problem. And we have that connection through this person. So on the right here, Michelle links to JP Morgan Capital Financial Limited, and she was appointed in September 2023. So here's JPM Morgan Capital Financing Limited. You can look into them. And they last changed their company name, you can see on the top there on the left, from Chase Capital Financing Limited. Now Chase ties in with the evidence around the World Trade Center, Chase Manhattan Bank, Chase Bank, and then linking to JP Morgan. And it changed on the 3rd of December 2001, less than 3 months after the World Trade Center disaster, and it has not changed its name since, and it's still an active company. Read into that what you will. On the incorporation document, it has an address that is normally linked to, as I've said, Slaughter and May, 35 Basinghall Street, London, but Slaughter and May don't appear to be on the documents. And also we now have a link to Clifford Chance that is also featured in the last one of the parts of these videos that I've done. And I suspect that is Max Clifford, because the evidence suggests that when you come in from Max Clifford. Now, linked to JPM nominees, you've got this person, Jane Elizabeth Lawson. Now, I'm not saying they're connected, but remember there's significant links to Nicola Bulley, to Madeleine McCann in all of this. And in the Nicola Bulley case, the lead investigating officer was a police officer called Peter Lawson. I think he was the assistant chief constable. And he was found deceased, untimely death, at the age of 50 in his home address. And now we have another Lawson. Whether that's a link to his family, I don't know, but I thought that was important to mention. The other thing is in the address for this person, it's old post office. Okay, now they use that a lot throughout the fraud. I've noticed it. And of course, we've got the post office scandal, the UK's largest miscarriage of justice that's been going on over the last few years. So looking into Jane Lawson, there's various JP Morgan companies. Again, you've got the same address here. That's in Hampshire, by the way. Hants is short for Hampshire, that address. And we've got JPMAZV Nominees Limited, and they dissolved in 2023. You can see on the bottom left. And in the registered office address, sorry, I haven't put boxes around this, you can see Mazars is linked to them. Now, Mazars is heavily linked to the World Trade Center disaster. You'll see that throughout my research significantly. And again, on the right there, it has a Trust Shelf Go number. It's also, you can see, linked to Eagle Star, which I believe is I could be wrong, I believe that's an insurance company. You can see above the red box on the right, you've got JPM, in other words, JP Morgan, in brackets, Eagle Star nominees. So they're all connected. You know, everything is pretty much centralized to a very small group of people, which is what obviously we're all now starting to become aware of. And you've got these various other Morgan companies. I'm not even showing you all of them, just some of them. But on the right there, you've got Morgan Property Development Company. Remember, real estate is huge in relation to this fraud. This is how I found out about this, through real estate. So Morgan Property Development Company, here it is. And that dissolved on the right. You can see in 2024, as I'm reporting and exposing this fraud, even though it was incorporated in 1986. So it's been around for quite a while, and it's now changing its company name. Sorry, it's now dissolving. And there's no name changes at all. So going back into the Bournemouth company, we have a Glenn Campbell Nietzsche. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And you can see they're a New Zealander. So we now bridge the fraud, goes across to New Zealand. I'm in touch with people all around the world. They're all confirming that the corruption is on another level with their governments now. Okay, and I think this is where the adrenochrome and the child trafficking all comes into it. I think this is why they're making so many mistakes, because I think the adrenochrome is affecting them psychologically. Probably there's information to suggest it causes schizophrenia. Anyway, we have now a connection to New Zealand. And on the right here, this person is linked to Playhouse. Now, I'd never heard of Playhouse. There's various Playhouse companies. I'm only showing you some of them. And we're going to look at Playhouse Clubs Limited on the right now. And again, you can see they're based in Hampshire. So Playhouse Clubs Limited. If we look at their previous company names, you can see that they had, on the bottom left there, a name of FYEO Limited. Well, I know that stands for Your Eyes Only, because in Bournemouth, there was a strip club called For Your Eyes Only. Okay, and when you look at this director, the company that this the director that this company is linked to, then you will see that there are many apparent sex industry companies. So you can have the word fantasy in it, etc. So we've now got a significant connection from the Bournemouth town centre bid company to the sex industry, okay, as well as to international banking fraud and to the police, okay. And on the incorporation document for this company, which was originally called FYEO Limited, View Eyes Only Limited, we have an armoury address. The Armoury, Unit R1, Fort Wellington, Military Road, Fareham, Hampshire, United Kingdom. Now, an armoury is normally where firearms are kept, and it's one of several places in the UK. It'll either be, generally, an armoury will be related to the police or to the military. And we now have a connection to one of those, I believe, and the sex industry and international government fraud. And we'll see some more mention of that in a minute. So when you type in Playhouse, it brings up Playhouse Theatre. I'd never heard of Playhouse. And this is what it says about Playhouse Theatre. The Playhouse Theatre is a West End theatre in the city of Westminster. Located in Northumberland Avenue near Trafalgar Square, central London. The theatre was built by Mr. Fowler or Mrs. Fowler and Hill, company called F.H. Fowler and Hill, with a seating capacity of 1,200. It was rebuilt in 1907 and still remains its original substage machinery as of November 2021. The theatre has been refurbished and advertised as the Kit Kat Club, while it is hosting a revival of the musical cabaret. That links to the research of Ghislaine Maxwell, Kit Kat Club. Okay, we're going to come to that in a minute. Further information in relation to that theatre says it was built by Sefton Henry Parry as the Royal Avenue Theatre. Okay, so there's a royal connection now. On the right, it says that in 1951 it was taken over by the BBC as a recording studio for live performances. So taken over by the BBC. The BBC were heavily connected to Jimmy Savile, and you know the rest. Okay, so they're heavily implicated in this, and of course they're linked to the fraud. So Kit Kat Club, this is on the left, a screenshot taken from my previous World Trade Center disaster document, so you can go and look at that. So it's evidence and research in relation to the World Trade Center disaster itself. And this specifically is information about Ghislaine Maxwell. And I've just zoomed in right on the right. Remember, we mentioned the Kit Kat Club a minute ago. And it says Maxwell was a prominent member of the London social scene in the 1980s. She founded a women's club named after the original Kit Kat Club. Okay, very important. Also, she was a director of Oxford United Football Club, which I featured in that document during her father's ownership. Now, unfortunately, football fans, you really need to get behind this evidence, okay? If you're innocent in this, I'm sure most of you will not condone the abuse of children. Not only the abuse, but far more sinister things happening as well. The torture and potentially murder and the adrenochrome in relation to those poor children being harvested from them. And you'll see some further links to football as we go down. So that unfortunately, most football clubs appear to be linked to this international government fraud. And then just another screenshot taken from my previous World Trade Center document. It mentions you can go and look at this, how it links into the legal system, the Temple Bar. And on the bottom there, you can see the information of, again, a German connection now. Okay, so we've got the Kit Kat Club is a nightclub in Berlin. Berlin opened in March 1994 by Austrian pornographic filmmaker Simon Thor and life partner Kirsten Kruger. So you can see how this is all linking in to the sex industry, to Ghislaine Maxwell, to the fraud, to international banking, and to the police and weapons systems. Firearms and armories, etc. So this is huge. And we have a German connection. Again, there's so many German connections, and all of the evidence is suggesting that all of these conflicts that we saw were not what we were led to believe. Both sides appear to have been funded by the same people, the research suggests, and Nazism, it appears, never went away. Okay, it appears that's why we're seeing all these German connections. And in fact, the international governments are all involved in the same conspiracy of fraud and child trafficking. So going back into the Bournemouth company. Bournemouth Town Centre bid, we have David Squire, and they are linked to the right there. You can see to Yellow Buses Holdings Limited, which has an address of Bournemouth Transport Limited on the right there. And we're going to look at these companies now. So here is Yellow Buses Holdings. It dissolved in January 2023 after I was reporting the fraud. We also have another company, Vintage Yellow Buses, and that dissolved in November 2022, not long after I was exposing this fraud. Again, based in Bournemouth. And here's Bournemouth Transport Limited. This is already featured on my previous documents. If you look at the BCP Council document, you will see that this company is already mentioned. And on the left, bottom left there, just to confirm, sorry, I forgot to mention this. So Vintage Yellow Buses used to be called Hants Dorset Omnibus Company Limited. So that's Hants stands for Hampshire. So Hampshire and Dorset are linked to those two counties. And remember, the the person within my company, the member of the Fleming family, had jurisdiction in the NHS with Hampshire, Isle of Wight and Dorset, in charge of a £700 million budget and 10,000 staff. On the right there, Bournemouth Transport is in the process of liquidation. Even though it was started in 1986, they're now in liquidation. I suspect it's because of the exposure of the fraud. And on the right here, I've just gone into the filing history and just showed some of the recent history in relation to it. And you can see as things have escalated here. So I'm reporting the fraud first in December 2021. And then I've escalated it through 2022. And then I started making complaints against the government's organisations at the end of 2000 or towards the end of 2022. And here we are. You can see as things are progressing here, administrators becoming involved in the company. Voluntary liquidator, July 2023, etc. And then you can see in August 2024, the 30th. So a few days ago, you can see they put an update on their liquidator's statement of receipts and payments. So they're shutting this company down. I wonder why. On their incorporation document, you have Jordan's. Okay. And on the top there, you'll see that Mr. Chappell on the incorporation document links to Bournemouth Borough Council. So the council are massively implicated in this. It's actually where my wife and I got married, in the building there. On there, further down on the incorporation document, you have Jordan and Sons Limited, and maybe the memorandum, and articles of association. So the same person, we're just going back, looking at the same person and going into another company that they're part of. Okay, so that's all we're doing. We're not far away at all from all of this. Remember, we're still linked very closely, in fact immediately, because this person is within it, the Bournemouth Town Centre bid company. So here we've got, they resigned from Yellow Coaches Limited on the 5th of August 2022. Looking at Yellow Coaches Limited on the right, we have active proposal to strike off, so they're dissolving as well. And we've also got that person, same director, just going back. We now have a smart company, Southwest Smart Applications Limited. Not just Dorset, not Bournemouth, Southwest, huge area, Smart Applications Limited. Smart, probably this is to do with the smart motorways or road systems they were trying to bring in. And you can see it's linked to Bournemouth Transport Limited again. So the yellow buses have just been mentioned. We've mentioned football clubs. Now, I was considering not showing this, but I think I have to, because I have a duty to the general public to disclose information, even if it may come across as defamatory. It isn't, because of the defence in law that enables it to be done. And this is all public information. So on the I think it was the 26th of, it might have been the 23rd of June 2023, I held a live stream on my Telegram channel to discuss all of what had been going on. This is going to be a long video. Okay, I'm just going to do this in one, so I've gone on a bit longer than I hoped. And we discussed, it was to discuss all of the things that I'd identified, and this person was listening in the background, Anthony Roberts, and this is a screenshot taken from his Facebook page, and he was listening in the background, and he confirmed, I called him out and asked him to talk to me, see if he was man enough, and he did, and he confirmed that he had been in collaboration with Sonia Poulton, who's an independent journalist that had been looking into Madeleine McCann and various other government corruption, and she had refused to assist me in exposing this evidence, but she had been in collaboration with Anthony Roberts, who was part of my company. And in fact, not only was he part of the company, he was the person that resigned right at the beginning on the July 2022, on the 11th, when I approached him to look at the bank documents. He became angry, and 2 days later, on the 13th of July, resigned as the acting chairman. I then became the acting chairman, took over, tried to establish what had been going on. Eventually, I was removed as a director because I refused to file our accounts with forged bank documents that I had acquired, which was a very, very serious crime. So they removed me. Anyway, so I held this live stream, and the day after, this was posted on my Rumble channel. So here's a video screenshot taken from my Rumble channel, and you can see the comment is by AFCB 1946, AFCB 1946, and it says, as someone who knows Gary Waterman personally, I've never heard such rubbish in my life. Anyone that has had dealings with him would laugh at his description of himself and the messages he is transmitting to the world. Now that, I suspect, was Anthony Roberts, because if you look at his previous experience on his Facebook page that I've acquired, he's a minibus driver at AFC Bournemouth Football Club, okay, the football club in Bournemouth. And remember, we've already mentioned football clubs. AFC Bournemouth is no exception. They are massively implicated in this fraud. They were owned by Russians. There's various Russian directors on their company. I've got the evidence for that. And they are linked to this fraud in a huge, huge way. But he was also a former bus driver at Yellow Buses. We've just been talking about Yellow Buses. Okay, all I've done is redact some faces of his family just to be courteous and respectful. This is his Facebook page. You can also see on the left there that he was a former coach driver for Shearing's Holidays. And I haven't researched that company, but having had discussions with him, he used to go to Switzerland a lot, to Interlaken. In fact, he used to have a picture on his Facebook page of Interlaken in the background. And we had various conversations. Now, I believe this is all divine intervention with my involvement in all of this, because my dad, my family, used to take us to Interlaken a lot in Switzerland. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And Anthony and I, before this all went on, we had discussions about that area and how lovely it is. He's now removed the picture of Interlaken on his Facebook page. Okay, and of course, it's in Switzerland. And I don't need to explain to everyone, I'm sure, why Switzerland is probably very, very important in relation to all of this. He was also, you can see on the top left there, a former clerical assistant at Dorset County Council. So the council we've just been talking about for motor tax. Okay. So, as we move down, so we had this Telegram live stream. And the other person that came on was this person on the left who I was led to believe was called Reynard Wilson. And Reynard Wilson also slipped up and confirmed that he had been or suggested he had been in collaboration with individuals within my company. He then went on to refuse to confirm or deny if that had been the case. This has been recorded. You can go and look at my collusion part 1 and part 2 videos to see the evidence in relation to this. But somebody else pointed me towards this person, who is the same person, okay? You can see it's the same person, under an alias name of Colin Suderman. And Colin Suderman is linked to the military, okay, and also 6G development, so directed energy systems. This was a picture that he had on my on one of his videos of me with guns pointing at me. Remember, we've already mentioned the armory. These, don't forget, this is a person that's connected to collaborating with the police, who are linked to the monarchy, politicians, NHS, and here they are. They're allowing somebody that they're collaborating with to do a picture of one of their former employees with guns pointing at their head. Okay, everyone hates Gary Waterman. Unreal, unreal. Looking at Colin Suderman's other experience and history, you can see, and I've already shown this again on the other videos, you can see he's connected to Ericsson's, which was linked to a recent mast that overlooking Fort William. Okay, linked to military. He's also linked to CYM Limited, which is on the adrenochrome document that has been acquired. He was also a disinformation propagation officer. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing that very well. And it was also linked to a company called Jobson Partners, and you can see that was linked to the vaccines, to Pfizer and Moderna. So let's move on. So back into the Bournemouth Town Centre bid company. So we have Martin Davies, and this Martin Davies links to loads of the legal firms. Okay, so all of these legal companies are now linked to this system of fraud, and their solicitors. And you can see we've got Rawlins Davy Reeves Company, and again an address of Richmond Hill, a different address again. Okay, well, it's actually one that was mentioned before, but they're using various ones. So we now have that linked to the addresses that they're using, and mismatching the different types of addresses, all part of the avoiding accountability and liability. And you can see when they changed their name, this company, looking at their overview, you can see on the left there that they changed their company name on October 2022. In fact, they changed it twice. This is as I'm reporting the fraud, remember. And then this person was appointed to the company in October 2022 as well. And they are linked to Jacobs and Reeves LLP, who dissolved on the right there, you can see, in October 2023. So they dissolved. Into Rawlins again, you've got a Mark Leon Kitely, who is a solicitor according to this, and he's linked to the Bournemouth and District Law Society. Now, this is already featured in my fraud. When you look at the corrupt court case process where Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited were trying to take me to court for non-payment of my service charges, this had already featured. And on the left there, you can see Bournemouth and District Law Society. This person resigned in June 2024 from that company. On the right, going into Bournemouth and District Law Society, we'll have a look at it again. It's actually, the registered office address is at the courts, okay? It's on Furvale Road. I knew that was the court. That's where the court is. I went to that court. I gave evidence maybe a couple of times in that court whilst I was a police officer in Bournemouth. So we now have a link to the actual courts, and it's an illegal entity company. And this is why, because you can see its registered name that's been registered correctly here, or a name that's been registered, shall we say, Bournemouth and, with the word and, District Incorporated Law Society, from 1893 to 1989. So it's a very old company. And if you look at the incorporation document, it's actually an and symbol. So they've deliberately committed fraud and registered it fraudulently. That should never have been trading. We're talking about the law courts here, the court system in Bournemouth. Let that sink in, how serious this now is. It should never have been trading because it's never been registered lawfully. And it does make the difference, even though it's just the and, because, and this is why every now and then you'll see they change their company name by adding a comma or removing a comma or a slight difference, because they know it creates that gap in the legality because it's not legally registered, and then that removes their accountability and liability. And the fraud is by the government. Remember, they have forged the register, and this is a good example. Okay, they've had what's on the document, the and symbol, and yet they've put the and word. Very, very important, everyone. Understand. You need to understand this. So the same person also links to Pool Bid Limited. That's the town just along from Bournemouth. So we now have not only Bournemouth Town Centre bid, we now have Pool Bid. And you can see they resigned in July 2022. Same person is linked to Kitesley Solicitors Limited. Kitesley Solicitors, and that has a registered office address in Poole. Again, the address, they use that throughout the fraud. And it originally had a company name in 1995 of the Andrew Isaacs Practice, in brackets Bournemouth Limited, from 1995 to 2003. And the incorporation document appears to be forged. Okay, you can see this is a good example of it. So where it's got the name, the Andrew Isaacs Practice Bournemouth Limited, the box is missing around it. You can see that should have a line going across the top. There should be a line across the middle underneath the words. That's gone. They've written in handwriting the word limited. I suspect the company name underneath this was written in handwriting and they've just gone over the top with a sticker or something. Well, you can't do that. This is a document. Once it's signed, you can't then alter the document. Once it's been signed and submitted, you can't go back years later and change the company name. And interestingly, this company is linked to Waterloo. You can see on the incorporation document, okay, which is linked to the Freemasons or the Masons. So back into Rawlins, and you'll see an Eliza Kenner of Milford-on-Sea, Hampshire. And I found this quite interesting, a company called Coping with Chaos Limited, linked to a correspondence address of a school. Back into Rawlins, you've got Owen Baker. They're linked to another solicitor's firm, Aldridge Brownlee. Now, going back into the Bournemouth Town Centre bid company, okay, so we've just gone back into that originally, and we're now with Catherine Elmer. She was appointed on the 15th of December 2022. So that was as I was reporting the fraud. And now we have pizza companies again. Black Pizza Limited, appointed in January 2023. On the right there, going into them, you can see they dissolved. So they're panicking, and they've dissolved in April 2024. A pizza company. I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to why that may be. Bearing in mind we're talking about child trafficking links and adrenochrome links. On the left, we've got Ian Jones within the Bournemouth companies. We've just gone back in the People Record looking at another director within that company. And they're actually an active director. And they link to the Southern Educational Facilities Management Limited company. Not Dorset, not Bournemouth, not specific area, but well, it is, but a large area, Southern Educational Facilities Management. So the management of facilities for educational establishments, it appears, in the southern part of the UK. So potentially a very important, huge company. Now, they were incorporated in 1998. That is around the same time, according to the research, that Douglas Dougie Smith became involved in fever sex parties. Douglas Dougie Smith is the special advisor for the last few prime ministers. According to Nadine Dorries, he practices the dark arts, and he's been arrested, according to the research, for threats to kill as well. So we now have this company, and as we look into it on the incorporation document, we'll see that it is linked to Eversheds. And this is important because Eversheds is linked to the police throughout the research and the fraud, linking the fraud to the police significantly. Okay, so we now have Eversheds. On the right there, within that Southern Educational Company, we have David Anthony Ford. This is important because he, that name links all of the management companies to Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited. Okay, so there's, and it links then to the Police and Crime Commissioner for the area, David Sidwick, via the Bournemouth School. And Ghislaine Maxwell also links in through those management companies, and so does Douglas Dougie Smith, the special advisor for the Prime Ministers. So that same director, Ian, Michael, whatever his surname was, that we were looking at, also links to more pizza companies. So we have Nice Slice Pizza Limited, an address in Wimborne. Okay, Wimborne is where I'm led to believe the particular people within Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited live. Okay, and they're also part of a church system. And here we have Church Street, Wimborne, Dorset. They were appointed in June 2022. We then also have a company called Naked Deli. Another one called Nudo. I'm just showing some of these. Another Naked Deli. Bearing in mind we're talking about sex industry, etc. I think this is part of the symbolism for them. Back into the Bournemouth bid company, we have Anthony Brown. Links to another different address in Richmond Hill. Remember, Richmond Hill links to the research regarding Madeleine McCann via Julia. We now have J.E. Bill Public Limited Company linked to Mr. Brown. J.E. Bill Public Limited Company. Those of you that live in Bournemouth will know that Bill's was a huge deal. It was a big building right in the middle of the square, prominent position. Bill's, it was a department store. And here we're going to look at them. J.E. Bill Public Limited Company. The address is very relevant, which we'll come to in a minute. 10 Fleet Place in London. but they dissolved in April 2023, even though they were incorporated in 1912, a very old company, and here they are now dissolving as I'm exposing this fraud. And it's an illegal entity company, because you can see we have on the left there J.E. Beale Public Limited Company, but on the incorporation document we have J.E. Beale Limited, not Public Limited Company. So that has been an illegal entity company that allows the ability to launder money through that company. Very, very important. No other name has been registered on the overview. Same person links to Beale Limited. Here they are again, 10 Fleet Place. And they also dissolved in April 2023. On their incorporation document, we have Pinsent and Co. They link to Pinsent Masons. That is also featured in the fraud. Now, I mentioned 10 Fleet Place. I knew that address featured before, and here it is. And that's because it links to Interpath, a company called Interpath Limited, which features throughout the fraud. That links to David Cameron and various other companies, the Global X, Seven Side, etc. You'll see it all over the documents and within the documents. So we now have a link to top-level government officials via that Beale's company. On the right there, now back into Bournemouth, we've got a Mark David Leslie Cater, Bournemouth Town Centre Bid Company, and we have more pizza companies. Centro Pizza Limited, Bournemouth Pizza 2016 Limited, based in Bournemouth. Let's look at that one, Bournemouth Pizza 2016 Limited. And as we go down onto the incorporation documents on the left there, you'll see it's companies made simple. We also have Centro Pizza Limited, and it's got an address in Finchley. Remember, Finchley Road fraud. Okay, this hasn't got 788, 799, 790 Finchley Road there, which is, as we are aware, linked to all of this evidence. But it is still Finchley. It's the same area, and I'm finding that a lot of the companies that are using Finchley as an address are linked to the fraud. And on the incorporation document on the left, it's companies made simple. On the right there, back into Bournemouth Town Centre Bid Company, you have Mark Howe. Mark Howe links to Seascape Group Limited. This is important. This is a council company, okay? This was where Andrew Mellor, who was the lead for Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, or Bournemouth Council at the time possibly, he was the lead for the council, and he resigned after I was reporting the fraud, and there were articles suggesting he was using council tax money through his own company, so defrauding the general public through the taxation system. And he then resigned, and the evidence that you can see in my BCP council document within the public document file, you will see they are linked to this international government fraud. In fact, you'll see addresses of Finchley Road that we've just been talking about, and he resigned, and he was linked to this company. But also the leader of the now leader of the council is also linked to that. I believe it was Vicky Slade, unless it's changed. She's also linked through to this company. And you can see there it's got a registered office address of BCP Council Civic Centre. And its previous company names, you can see there, 2013 was Bournemouth Council Trading Limited and Bournemouth Council Group Limited, and then they changed their name again in 2018. So that's it for that document. Hopefully that will make sense. So just to summarise, we've gone from companies called the World Trade Centre Limited, linking immediately to Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, international government fraud throughout. Another company with the same or similar name then links to Freemasons, or certainly Masons, international government fraud throughout, links through to child trafficking, through to Wales, where the King was the Prince of Wales, where this all begins with the Companies House creation of these illegal entities, and where the assets of those illegal entities, when they dissolve, go back to the Crown. All linked through to this. We've then gone in and found a link with the help of somebody else through to World Trade Centre Business Limited, that links to the fraud again to an Italian company that then links into Portuguese connections and to Crown intelligence investigation companies, again linked to the fraud. And then further research from one of those Italian names links immediately to Bournemouth town centre companies and the police and the sex industry and armories and international government fraud throughout to the councils, etc. It's huge. Hopefully that will make sense. God bless you all.